Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. Concrete truck just arrived on the job site. This is part two of a multi-part series. That's the fiber mesh I'm going to be adding into the load here. I'm going to climb up, drop it in. It also gives me a good opportunity to look at the concrete to see what's going on. Do I need to add water, or what condition it's in at that point before I start pouring it. I'm just re-snapping the lines because we saturated this. In part two it shows this completed, although since we saturated we lost a little bit of the line, so we just re-snapped the morning of the pour. Here we are, just starting out in the corner, far corner. So I got the 2x4 aluminum, that's my overhead screed, and then on the rod board here we're just got a little wood stake nailed on top that rides on top of that aluminum. That's number 3 rebar on 2-foot centers, and we're just pulling it up as we go out. We're going to do 17 yards in this backyard. Here's the 4-foot magnesium bowl float with a rocker arm on it. So when we bowl float it, we bowl float it in both directions. That's the best way to get it flat. If you got the space and the axis, bowl float in two directions. Now we're pouring about a 1/2 inch underneath the weep screed. The existing concrete that we removed, which you can see in part 1, was actually above the weep screed. We just lowered everything down, and then we added some drains in here. All these drains, they make a complete U shape around both sides of the house, and then they exit at the back of city sidewalk. So we have 3 drains, and in between each drain is a high point right at middle. So we're looking at about 1.5% slope in all directions to the drain. And this is our first pass out there on the sliders. And what we'll do is re-rod around the drain. We got about a 4-foot 2x4, and we'll recut around each drain as we go through, just to get it really shaped up nicely so all the water hits the drain. We have expansion foam underneath the weep screed on the house, and that does a couple things. It gives it some space to move, and then also it gives it a little breathing space underneath that weep screed as well. So any water that gets in the stucco could come out the bottom. And this particular mix that we're using is a 3000 psi pea gravel 3H minus. There's the second pass. This will be our third and final pass, and then I'm going to be brooming it right behind the guy's trailer on the ground. I prefer dry brooming everything. That way, whenever you add water to the surface and you brush it in, you're actually weakening the surface. So it's best if you can just go ahead and broom it with a dry broom. As we go through, we're going to pull the drain. I have the drain grates in there on the initial pour taped off so no concrete goes down into the pipe. Then as the concrete stiffens up, we just pull the whole grate and the tape out, clean them up, and then we can put them back in there when we do the saw cutting. We're going to be saw cutting this up in 5-foot squares on a 45-degree angle to the house with a 1-foot band all the way around the perimeter. Here we are on the day after the pour, and you can see it's starting to cure out pretty quickly along the block wall because that's where we got most of the sunlight. So you can see the different colors in it where it got more exposed to the sun. So here's the layout. What I did initially is, see that center line? I'm not really saw cutting on that, but that gives me a center. Even though the wall and the house aren't perfectly parallel, I make that line down the middle, centered at both ends, and then I work my grid off of that. And that's how you would lay a tile or anything out. You start with the center point, then once you get that, you can move, you can go the center the other direction as well, but in this case I just took the one line and then I worked off of that. Here's the Medusa. Also, I'm using the DeWalt cordless vacuum on it. It's got a dual HEPA filter, fleece bag inside it. On that fleece bag, I loaded it 2 times on this job site, and I just dumped it out and reused the bag over and over. Now on that cordless DeWalt vacuum, what I'd like to do is build, maybe mount it on a skateboard or some kind of rolling cart so it'll just roll around with me. Or maybe I'll mount it to the handle of the Medusa or something. I don't know. I'm working on some ideas for that. Right here the bag was already full, so it's not picking up as well, as you can tell there by the leftover dust. So once I dumped it, we got back on track. Now here's how I complete all these little tight corners. I just get the 4.5-inch right angle grinder out. Another cordless tool. Now on the band, wherever I have the diagonal saw cuts hitting the band, I'm just going to go straight off of all those cuts, because if it cracks on one of those 45-degree angles that go all the way across the slab, it's going to continue through the band, of course, and we're going to give it a saw cut to follow through. We just use a square, framing square on this, penciled it in, and then I just eyeballed the cut. After all the cutting is complete, we break out the pressure washer. Clean the house at the same time from all that dust we generated in part 1. And you can see how well these drains are working here, because as fast as I put the water down, it disappears. So this is the second day after the pour. The first day after we left, the homeowner started watering 1 hour after I left. And that was after we broomed the concrete. He watered it every hour and a half during daylight hours. And now he'll continue to do that for the next 2 weeks. All these cuts are 1 inch deep, because whenever you're cutting 45 grit, concrete typically likes to crack at the shortest distances. And when you're cutting at a 45, that's the longest distance. So you're going to have to cut them all deep. You don't know where it's going to really crack at this point. Anyway, thanks for watching, and make sure you stay tuned for the next part, which is the side yards of the concrete and the entire drain system and where it exits. Have a good one.